My family pressured me to cover their debt. The loan officer pulled the original agreement. Before you find out what happens next, hit the subscribe button and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. We want to see just how far this life-changing story can reach. My phone buzzed against the cheap laminate of my desk, vibrating with a persistence that made my stomach churn. I didn't need to look at the screen to know who it was. It was my mother. She only called when the walls were closing in, and judging by the 5 missed calls I had already ignored this morning, the walls weren't just closing in, they were crumbling. I worked as a freelance data analyst, a job my family described to their friends as computer repair, because it sounded less impressive. They liked to believe I was struggling. It made them feel better about their own chaotic lives. I finally picked up. "Hello, Mom." Her voice was shrill, piercing through the speaker. "Daniel, where have you been? We have an emergency." "A family emergency." I sighed, rubbing my temples. In my family, an emergency usually meant my brother, Tyler, had crashed a car or my father had made a bad investment. "What is it this time?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "It's the house," she said, her voice dropping to a dramatic whisper. "The bank is threatening to take it. We need you to come home. Now." I looked around my small, tidy apartment. I had distanced myself from them for a reason. Their world was one of flash and debt, appearances and lies. Mine was quiet, solvent, and real. "I can't just leave work," I lied. "You have to," she insisted. "Tyler is here. Dad is here. We're all going to the bank at 2 o'clock. We need you to co-sign the restructuring plan. It's just a formality, Daniel. Just a signature to save your childhood home. A signature. That's all they ever wanted from me. My name to clean up their mess." I drove my 10-year-old sedan up the winding driveway of the family estate. The house was a sprawling Victorian mansion that my grandfather had bought in the 70s. It was beautiful, with wraparound porches and towering oak trees, but up close you could see the cracks. The paint was peeling near the gutters. The lawn was overgrown. It was a perfect metaphor for my parents. Impressive from a distance, falling apart upon closer inspection. My father's luxury SUV was parked in the driveway next to Tyler's bright red sports car. Seeing that car made my blood boil. Tyler was 2 years older than me, the visionary, the entrepreneur. He had never held a real job in his life, yet he always had new gadgets and designer clothes. I parked my humble car behind them and took a deep breath. I wasn't here to save them, I told myself. I was here to see the truth. I had suspected for a long time that their financial house of cards was about to collapse, and I needed to know if I was going to be buried in the wreckage. I walked up the steps. The front door swung open before I could knock. My father stood there, looking flushed and sweaty in a suit that was a size too tight. "You made it," he said, not smiling. "Good. We don't have much time. The meeting is in an hour." He didn't ask how I was. He didn't offer me water. He just checked his watch, treating me like an employee who was late for a shift. Inside, the house smelled of stale perfume and anxiety. My mother was sitting on the velvet sofa, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. Tyler was pacing the room, typing furiously on his phone. When he saw me, he stopped and smirked. "The prodigal son returns," Tyler said, slipping his phone into his pocket. "Ready to be a hero, Danny?" "I'm not here to be a hero," I said, standing my ground near the doorway. "I'm here because Mom said you were losing the house." "How did this happen?" "Grandpa left this place free and clear." My father poured himself a drink from the crystal decanter, his hands shaking slightly. "Business, Daniel. You wouldn't understand. The market shifted. We had to leverage the equity to keep the lifestyle, to keep the businesses afloat." "Leverage the equity?" I repeated. "You mean you took out mortgages?" "Plural." My mother looked up, her eyes flashing with sudden anger. "We did what we had to do. Your brother needed capital for his venture. We needed to maintain our standing in the club. You can't understand the pressure we are under." "The venture." I knew about Tyler's venture. It was a cryptocurrency scheme that had evaporated 6 months ago. "So you bet the house on Tyler's coin," I said flatly. "And now the bank wants their money." "It's not a big deal," Tyler said, waving his hand dismissively. "It's a liquidity issue. My assets are tied up right now. Once the market turns, I can pay it all off. But the bank is being unreasonable. They want a lump sum, or a guarantor with a steady W-2 income to restructure the loan." He pointed a finger at me. "That's you. Mr. Steady. Mr. Boring. We just need your credit score," my father added, stepping closer. "Our scores took a hit because of some missed notifications. But yours is perfect. We checked." I stiffened. "You checked my credit?" "It doesn't matter," my mother interrupted. We need you to sign as a co-borrower. It will lower the interest rate and stop the foreclosure. You won't have to pay a dime. Tyler will cover the monthly payments. I almost laughed. Tyler hadn't paid a bill in his life. They wanted to strap me to a sinking ship. And if I don't? I asked. The room went silent. My mother's face crumbled into a mask of tragedy. Then we lose everything. Your father and I will be homeless. Is that what you want? To see your parents on the street because you were too selfish to sign a piece of paper? The guilt trip. It was their favorite weapon and they wielded it with expert precision. We're leaving now, my father announced, grabbing his keys. We can discuss the details in the car. I shook my head. I'll drive myself. I'll meet you at the bank. I needed the separation. I needed the silence of my own car to think. As I followed their expensive convoy to the downtown branch, my mind raced. I knew I shouldn't sign. It was financial suicide. But a small part of me, the part that still wanted their approval, hesitated. Maybe I could demand control of the finances in exchange? Maybe I could force them to sell the sports car? But I knew better. They would promise the moon and deliver nothing. I decided then and there that I wasn't going to sign. I was going to the meeting to get the hard numbers, to see exactly how deep the hole was, and then I was going to walk away. I owed them that much, to witness the disaster but not to participate in it. We arrived at the First National Bank, a towering building of glass and steel. My parents walked in with their heads held high, pretending they were there to make a deposit rather than beg for mercy. Tyler trailed behind them looking bored. I took up the rear, feeling like an executioner walking toward the gallows. The bank lobby was cool and quiet. A receptionist directed us to a glass-walled office in the back. A plaque on the door read, Mr. Henderson, Senior Loan Officer. We filed in. Mr. Henderson was a man in his 60s, with gray hair and sharp, intelligent eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He stood up to shake my father's hand, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. Mr. and Mrs. Sterling, Henderson said, gesturing to the chairs. And? He looked at me and Tyler. These are my sons, my father said, puffing out his chest. Tyler, my business partner, and Daniel, he works in computers. Henderson's gaze lingered on me for a second longer than necessary. I gave him a polite nod. I was wearing a simple button-down shirt and slacks, a stark contrast to my family's designer labels. I see, Henderson said, sitting back down. He opened a thick file folder on his desk. Well, let's get right to it. As we discussed on the phone, the forbearance period ends tomorrow. The bank is prepared to initiate foreclosure proceedings unless the arrears are cleared or the loan is fully refinanced with additional collateral. That's why we are here, my father said confidently. We are bringing Daniel on board. He has excellent credit and a steady income. He is going to co-sign the refinancing agreement. My father turned to me, his eyes warning me to play along. Right, Daniel? I sat there, feeling the weight of the room on my shoulders. Mr. Henderson looked at me. Is this true, Mr. Sterling? Are you aware of the amount of debt secured against the property? I'm not, I said clearly. Nobody has given me a number. My mother gasped softly. My father kicked me under the table. Henderson raised an eyebrow. Transparency is vital in these proceedings, he said. He turned a document around and slid it toward me. I looked at the number at the bottom of the page. My breath hitched. $800,000? I whispered. The house is only worth $900,000. They took out multiple lines of credit, Henderson explained calmly. And a second mortgage 3 years ago. I looked at my parents. They had stripped the equity bone dry. Where did the money go? I asked, though I knew the answer. It went to cars, vacations, and Tyler's failed schemes. It went into the family brand. Tyler snapped. You have to spend money to make money, Daniel. You wouldn't get it with your minimum wage mindset. I don't make minimum wage, I said, my voice hardening. But I also don't owe nearly $1 million to a bank. Gentlemen, please, Henderson interrupted. The question remains. Daniel, are you willing to assume liability for this debt? If you sign, you are responsible. If the payments are missed, and looking at the history here, that is a significant risk. The bank will come after your assets. Your wages will be garnished. Your credit will be destroyed. Henderson wasn't selling me the loan. He was warning me. He was a decent man. He'll sign, my mother said, reaching over to grab my hand. Her grip was like a vice. He loves this family. He knows that without this house, we are nothing. She looked at me, her eyes pleading. Danny, please. Grandpa built that house. You can't let strangers take it. The mention of Grandpa stung. He was the only one who had ever treated me with respect. He had taught me to save, to work hard, to be honest. He would be horrified if he saw what they had done. Grandpa wouldn't want this, I said, pulling my hand away. He wouldn't want me to ruin my life to pay for Tyler's mistakes. Selfish, my father barked, slamming his hand on the desk. After everything we gave you. We put a roof over your head. We fed you. You're asking me to pay for a roof that you already own. I countered. Or owned until you gambled it away. I stood up. I'm sorry, Mr. Henderson. I won't be signing. I can't. My mother started to sob, loud, theatrical sobs. Tyler stood up and got in my face. You coward. You're jealous, that's what this is. You want to see us fail. I don't want to see you fail, I said quietly. I just don't want to drown with you. I turned to leave. Wait, Henderson's voice cut through the noise. It was sharp, authoritative. We all froze. Sit down, Daniel. Please. There was something in his tone that made me obey. I sat back down. My parents looked hopeful, thinking the banker was going to convince me. Mr. Henderson wasn't looking at me, though. He was looking at a computer screen, frowning. He typed something, hit enter, and then adjusted his glasses. There is an anomaly in the file, he murmured. I was reviewing the title history to prepare the foreclosure documents, and I noticed something irregular regarding the original deed transfer. What do you mean? My father asked, wiping sweat from his forehead. The deed is in my name. Henry left it to me. He left it to you in his will, yes, Henderson said slowly. Or so it appeared. But the bank's legal department just uploaded a scanned document from our archives. The original agreement for the collateral. Henderson stood up and walked to a filing cabinet in the corner. He unlocked it and pulled out a dusty yellowed folder. When you took out the first loan against the house 10 years ago, Mr. Sterling, you provided the deed as proof of ownership. Do you remember that? Of course, my father said. It was standard procedure. It was, Henderson agreed. He opened the folder and pulled out a document with a blue cover. However, looking at this original agreement, I see a clause here that was overlooked by the junior officer who approved your subsequent loans. Henderson looked up, his eyes locking onto my father. This isn't a standard fee simple deed. This is a life estate deed. My father blinked. A what? A life estate, Henderson repeated. Your father, Henry Sterling, did not leave you the house outright. He gave you a life estate. That means you have the right to live in the house for your lifetime, provided you maintain the property and pay the taxes. So, it's the same thing, Tyler said impatiently. He owns it. No, Henderson said, a small, cold smile touching his lips. He doesn't. He is a tenant with privileges. He cannot sell the property, and more importantly, he cannot encumber the property with debt beyond the value of his life interest. The room went dead silent. The air conditioner hummed loudly in the background. What are you saying? My mother whispered. I'm saying, Henderson continued, that the mortgages you took out, the $800,000, are technically invalid against the property itself because you didn't have the right to pledge the house as collateral. You pledged something you didn't own. My father's face turned a pale shade of gray. But, the bank approved it. They gave us the money. They did, Henderson nodded. And that was the bank's error. However, the original agreement signed by Henry Sterling has a termination on encumbrance clause. Clause 4, Section B. Henderson put on his reading glasses and read from the document. Should the life tenant attempt to mortgage, sell, or otherwise encumber the primary estate, the life estate shall immediately terminate, and full ownership shall revert instantly to the remainder man. Remainder man? I asked. It was a legal term I vaguely remembered from a business law class. The person who actually owns the future interest in the house, Henderson explained. The person Grandpa Henry designated to inherit the property after your parents passed away. My parents looked at each other in panic. Who is the remainder man? My father demanded. It must be Tyler. He's the eldest. Tyler straightened his jacket. Yeah, it's probably me. So, I can just authorize the loans retroactively, right? Henderson ignored him. He flipped to the last page of the yellowed document. He ran his finger down to the signature line. The remainder man listed in the 1998 trust agreement is Daniel Sterling. I felt like I had been punched in the chest. Me? I whispered. Grandpa left the house to me? He did, Henderson confirmed. But he wanted your parents to have a place to live. He trusted them to take care of it. But he explicitly forbade them from borrowing against it. He knew their spending habits even back then, it seems. My mother let out a screech. That's a lie. Henry would never do that. Daniel was just a child. He was 12, Henderson said. And Henry set up the trust specifically for him. By taking out that first loan 10 years ago, Mr. and Mrs. Sterling, you triggered the termination clause. Henderson closed the folder with a snap. Legally speaking, you haven't owned a life interest in that house for a decade. You have been living in Daniel's house. And the debt you racked up? It's unsecured personal debt. It cannot be attached to the house because the house belongs to Daniel, and Daniel didn't sign the loans. The gravity of the situation crashed down on my family. My father slumped in his chair. Unsecured debt? He croaked. That means the house is safe, Henderson said, looking at me. The bank cannot foreclose on 42 Oak Street because the bank has no valid claim on it. The lien is void. I sat back, my mind reeling. The house was mine. It had been mine for years. Grandpa had protected me. He had known even back then that they would try to eat everything he built. He had set a trap for their greed and they had walked right into it. But wait, Tyler stammered. If the debt isn't on the house, where is it? It is on your parents personally, Henderson said. And since you, Tyler, co-signed 2 of those loans, it is on you as well. The bank will move to collect. We will seize your bank accounts, your cars, and any other personal assets. But we cannot touch the real estate. My mother turned to me, her eyes wide with a new kind of desperation. Daniel, she breathed, you own the house. Oh, thank God. You can save us. You can take out a new mortgage, a legal one, and pay off our personal debts. You can fix this. I looked at her. It was incredible. Even after being exposed as frauds who tried to steal my inheritance and ruin my credit, her first instinct was to ask me to pay their bills. Did you hear what Mr. Henderson said? I asked calmly. You lost your right to live there 10 years ago when you tried to pawn Grandpa's legacy. We're your family, my father shouted, finding his voice again. You ungrateful little wretch. You knew about this. You planned this. I knew nothing, I said, standing up. I came here today ready to be guilt-tripped into signing my life away. Instead, I found out you've been living in my house and lying to me for my entire adult life. You have to help us, Tyler pleaded, his swagger completely gone. They're going to take my car. They're going to take my crypto wallet. You should have thought of that before you spent $800,000 you didn't have, I said. I turned to Mr. Henderson. So what happens now? Well, Henderson said, the bank will begin collections against David, Linda, and Tyler Sterling. As for the property, I need to update the title records. The deed needs to be formally recorded in your name, Daniel. You are the sole owner, effective immediately. And the occupants? I asked. Henderson looked at my parents. That is up to you. They are technically squatters at this point. You can evict them or you can let them stay. But the bank has no say in it. My father stood up, his face red. You can't evict us. It's our home. It's my home, I corrected him. Grandpa gave it to me. And you tried to sell it to the bank. I looked at them, the 3 people who had made me feel small and worthless for years. I held all the cards. I could let them stay. I could let the cycle continue. Or I could finally break it. I want them out, I said to Henderson. Is there a formal process? Daniel, my mother screamed. How could you? You tried to trick me into $800,000 of debt today, Mom, I said coldly. You were ready to sacrifice me to save your lifestyle. I'm just protecting my asset. Isn't that what you taught me? Business is business. You have 30 days, I told them. That's more than you deserve. Pack your things. Don't take anything that belongs to the house. No furniture, no paintings. Only your personal clothes and items. Where will we go? Tyler asked, looking like a frightened child. I heard studio apartments in the bad part of town are cheap, I said, repeating the insult he had thrown at me years ago when I moved out. This isn't over, my father yelled as I walked toward the door. I'll sue you. I'll contest the will. You can try, Henderson interjected calmly. But the termination on encumbrance clause is ironclad. And frankly, Mr. Sterling, if you push this, the bank might consider filing fraud charges. You represented yourself as the fee simple owner when you signed those loan documents. That is bank fraud. Prison time is a real possibility. My father snapped his mouth shut. The threat of prison was the only thing that could silence his arrogance. He slumped back into his chair, a defeated man. I walked out of the bank and into the bright afternoon sunlight. The air tasted sweeter. I walked to my beat-up sedan and leaned against it, looking at my parents' luxury SUV and Tyler's sports car. They would be gone soon, repossessed by the bank to pay off a fraction of their debt. I drove back to the house, my house. I parked in the driveway and walked up the steps. I didn't go inside. I just sat on the porch swing, the one Grandpa used to sit on. I remembered him telling me stories about how he worked 3 jobs to buy this land. He wanted it to be a fortress for his family. He didn't know his son would try to destroy it, but he was wise enough to give me the keys to save it. The next month was chaotic. My parents and Tyler moved out, screaming and crying the whole time. They looted the pantry and took the towels, but I let it slide. They moved into a small rental condo on the other side of town. The bank took the cars. Tyler had to get a job as a bartender. My father was forced into early retirement with a fraction of his pension remaining after the garnishments. I moved into the master bedroom. It felt strange at first, sleeping in the house that had been a source of so much tension. But I started to make it my own. I painted the walls. I fixed the peeling paint on the gutters. I hired a gardener to tame the lawn. One evening I found a box in the attic. It was Grandpa's old things. Inside, tucked into an old Bible, was a letter addressed to me. It was sealed. I opened it carefully. Dear Daniel, if you are reading this, it means your father messed up. I love him, but he has a hole in his pocket, where his common sense should be. I built this house for you. You are the only one who understands the value of $1 and the value of a home. Don't let them bully you. You are stronger than you think. Keep the house standing. Love, Grandpa. I folded the letter and put it in my pocket. Tears pricked my eyes. He had known all along. 6 months later, I hosted a dinner party. Not for my family but for my friends, the real ones who had stuck by me when I was poor. We sat in the dining room eating pizza off paper plates because I hadn't bought fancy china yet. Laughter filled the room, chasing away the ghosts of my family's pretension. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Tyler. Hey bro, can I borrow $50? Rent is due. I looked at the message. I thought about the way he used to mock my car. I thought about how he tried to feed me to the bank wolves. I deleted the message and blocked the number. I walked out to the porch for some fresh air. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the lawn. A car drove by slowly. It was my father in a beat-up compact car. He slowed down, looking at the house. Looking at me. I raised a hand in a wave. He didn't wave back. He just drove on, disappearing down the road. I wasn't angry anymore. I just felt a deep sense of relief. The cycle was broken. The debt was gone. And the house was finally safe. I went back inside and locked the heavy oak door. I walked through the quiet hallway, listening to the creak of the floorboards. It was the sound of history, the sound of home. I walked into the study, sat at Grandpa's desk, and opened my laptop. I had work to do. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't working to survive. I was working to build. I was the remainder man. And I was here to stay.